But one, yeah, off the road that comes back.
Yep, you're on.
All right, I show 3 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order.
What?
We'll call the Sarpy County Board of Equalization meeting to order. It's 3 o'clock on Tuesday, March 29, 2022. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the county boardroom. We'll call the meeting to order. We have present Commissioners Mixon, Warren, Klug, and Burmeister. Commissioner Kelly is absent at the moment at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial dedication. Will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Angie. The assessor. The assessor didn't approve myself. Casual right here.
Okay. And I show that the county assessor, Mr. Pittman, is here, and the county clerk, Deb Houghtaling. And who was the third one, Deb?
Well, where's Dan? He's not here.
Okay, so the two.
Thank you.
We'll get there. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Please vote.
A's for, absent Kelly.
The first item on the regular agenda is 5.1, tax corrections 16980 to 16981. Dan Pittman, County Assessor.
Good afternoon. There's two. It's just basically swapping, taking a exemption off of one and putting it on another homestead exemption.
Any questions for Dan?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve. Any comments? Please vote.
A's for, absent Kelly.
5.2 is a Form 51 exemption applications, 2 for Duet, parcels 011587865 and 011587866, request for waiver of filing deadline. I showed Debbie Herbel, Duet Agency Director, and Dan Pittman.
Okay. Eastern Nebraska Human Services Agency owns 2 lots in a residential area that they're preparing to develop, and they owned them last year, so they would have had to have filed an exemption application by December 31st. They didn't, but there's a provision in the law for them to still file, but you have to grant them a waiver for good cause to let the assessor go ahead and consider the application.
And I see that Mr. Jerem is here on behalf of Duet. Would you like to come forward, Mr. Jerem?
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Good to see you all. Chris Jerem, 619 North 90th Street, Wood King Gibbons Law Firm for ENSA. Happy to answer any questions you may have. There was a delay in development because of a floodplain mapping that the ENSA is trying to work through, but it looks like things should improve this year, so they request your approval. Thank you.
And I need to announce that I need to recuse myself from this vote as I sit on this board.
Okay. Mr. Pittman, the only question I have is what you had said about the waiver, and then you would review it and decide. So is there just cause? Have you been working? Do you feel there's just cause here?
It's up to you to determine if there's just cause based upon their testimony or their letter. And if you say, okay, we're satisfied with that, then that gives me the go-ahead to look at the application, determine if I as an assessor can approve it. So your end will be the accepting the waiver, and my end will be...
Right, but my question directly to you, in working with them, do you see this is a possible?
Yes.
There's good cause here, it's all...
Yes, I believe if you vote for it, that it'll pass the law and the concerns I have concerning exemption.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve, although Debbie is not here, and even though Chris did the presentation, I'll still go ahead and do that.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the exemption waiver. Any further comments or questions? Please vote.
Ayes, Klug, Mixon, Warren, abstain, Burmeister, absent, Kelly.
All agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Equalization is adjourned. Set for the Board of Commissioners.
Give me just 1 minute here. Angie, repeat who says the motion for us. When you do the motion, repeat the name because it helps me verify on the record. Okay. Thank you. We're good. Okay. All right, I'm ready.
I show 306. I'll call to order the Sarpy County Board of Commissioners. We have present Commissioners Mixon, Warren, Klug, and Burmeister. Commissioner Kelly is absent. Commissioners and administrators, announcements and comments. Commissioner Mixon?
None.
None.
None, thank you.
Moving on to the consent.
Commissioner Warren, were you going to move an item?
Yeah. She's going to the consent agenda right now. Is it all right to go ahead and do it?
Sure.
On the consent agenda, I'd like to move item 4.3 to the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a motion?
Yep.
No, he doesn't need a motion to do that.
All right.
Oh, wait, I've lost my, how come I don't have a box?
Is there,
Now we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with 4.3 moved to the regular agenda.
Okay, hold on, we don't have a box here, how come? We don't have a box.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me.
No, I don't have a voting box.
To move to regular?
No, so they can do consent. We can play that one.
There we go. Just go
Will that
consent
work?
and let 'em- Yeah.
All right, hold on. Okay, guys, will you send your votes in again, please? Okay. Who moved?
Klug moved.
I'll hit you. And who seconded?
I will.
Is that Mr.
Mixon
Mixon?
seconded.
All right, you're in. Okay. Please vote,
If you can.
if you can.
I don't.
No
I don't have a vote.
I
Do you
don't
not have a
the-
voting box?
Nope.
See, this doesn't work. All right, hold on. I'm going to do it. Are you all A's, may I ask?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. How about A's 4, absent Kelly? Thank you very much.
sounds good.
We had a glitch down here. I'm sorry.
Okay, item number 4.3 is Resolution 2022-046, reject bids for land sale of 240B Willow Creek Replat at the southwest corner of 144th and Harrison Streets. Beth Garber, Purchasing and Capital Projects Manager.
I can answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I had taken a look at it, and I talked to Mr. Lang yesterday, and simply because of the nature of the property, it's extremely isolated, and is probably only one logical buyer who presented what I think is a good, or at least a fair bid on a parcel of ground, $4 roughly, a little bit over per acre, which is apartment building ground. So that's why I'd like to see it considered not to be rejected at this time, but simply discussed and then potentially to accept their bid.
For sure. So I'll give you some background on where we are with this parcel. We did receive two bids, $35,000 and $90,000, $90,125, with the high bid being from Prim. After review, we do recommend it that we seek a formal appraisal for the property based on the highest and best use. We received two values, informal appraisal values ranging from $300,000 to $500,000 for the property as is condition. Just want to review that, make sure that we're in the right space before we re-seek bids on that.
So if we reject these bids today, everybody has a chance to bid again. right?
Correct. There is another option in the statute. Nicole, do you want to, with rejecting the bids and? Yeah, we can.
Yeah, you're able to reject the bids and then do a private negotiation with one of the landowners. Or excuse me, one of the owners.
Either of them that bid, correct?
Yes.
Okay, obviously, the one that bid 35 is way low. So, but, okay. So you could negotiate with them, and then if you can't come up with whatever, we're looking at trying to get an appraisal, find out what it's worth, and then we can negotiate, and then if we don't come to any meaningful bid acceptance or whatever, at that point, we could post it to rebid. Is that correct?
Well, I think my recommendation today is if you do want to get an appraisal, is probably to reject the bids and wipe the slate clean today. That way you'll have the appraisal notice, and then you can have another public hearing, which would be required under the statute to talk about the value of the land at that point in time.
Okay.
So I think that makes it a little more clean as far as how things go.
I guess typically in this situation, don't we normally get an appraisal before we put it out to bid?
We don't typically sell a lot of land, so, yeah.
Well, that answers my question. So I think that's probably a good practice going forward when we come up with this again. So,
Is there any advantage to not rejecting the bid today per Jim's comments? Does that create any extra work for the county or for you as we try to navigate this?
I mean, my advice is to go ahead and reject the bids because then it's a clean slate. The work will probably be the same or similar, but I think once you have a clean slate, then there is a statutory process, and this sort of makes it a little bit less consistent with the statutory process. There's nothing wrong with that approach, but I think it's cleaner the other way. If you reject the bids and then get the appraisal and then we put it out for bid again, having a better idea. And that way, at that public hearing, you can then have another discussion about the value of the land. So,
Thank you.
is there any merit just to not do anything and move this down the line? I'm thinking to myself, and I'm thinking that's probably not, that's just kicking it down the road a couple of weeks, moving it 2 weeks down, look at an appraisal, look at getting an appraisal, look at maybe trying to come up with a solution to it before we start all over again. Is there merit to that, or because your advice was reject and move forward?
right, the timing of everything is that the county board is required to set a date of sale within 2 months of the public hearing, which we've set the date of sale for today. So you could, I guess it depends on when the public hearing was.
So we'd have to have a decision by the end of April, would be the latest. We can try to get an appraisal done in that time.
Well, I'm looking for best legal advice, I guess, on.
Yeah, I mean, it's related to a timing issue as far as you could delay the date of the sale, but you're still either, the situation is you reject the bids or you or you accept one of the bids or you negotiate. That is a possibility. So I guess I'm trying to say, I think you can skin the cat
Yeah.
many different ways.
All right, give me the legal advice then.
Right.
Reject the bids, I think is what you're telling me. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
If you reject the bids today, I think it's a cleaner process. Then you can have another public hearing related to the appraisal, using that appraised value. And then you've got the rest, then no one can come and say, I wasn't part of this public process. You got an appraisal out of line of how you normally do things.
Okay.
But you do have the option to, if the bids are substantially lower than what we think the appraisal or the market value is, you can still negotiate with somebody. But my advice is to start fresh. But there's nothing wrong with doing it a different way.
Okay, it's a public
Would you
hearing.
allow
Yeah.
Mr. Lang to speak?
Sure. Mr. Lang, did you want to address the board?
I don't,
Who does that? Not me. Who does that?
Jamie?
Jamie? We'll get it up for you, sir. Hold on.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Where's all of our guys at?
I know.
I'll just go ahead and get started then, if that's okay.
You could
Still
take a
here.
picture.
We're good. Okay.
Okay. Here's the parcel here. I'll just kind of get started here for the board. My name's Jim Lang. I'm an attorney at 8526 F Street. Represent the owner of the adjoining property, Krishna LLC. Krishna LLC's owner principal is Prim Aurora, who's here today. The parcel owned by Krishna is a 54-unit apartment complex. Krishna's owned this since 2006. I think this property's been vacant probably during that same period of time. The property, my understanding, was acquired by the county for, and maybe the state for road improvements which were made here in the last few years. And the purpose of my putting this on the board is that, first of all, the parcel is about 0.48 acres, about 21,000 square feet. It's a small parcel. When the county acquired this years ago, my understanding, there were improvements on the parcel. There was a C-store, a gas station improvements. There was access to the property, so the property had value as a commercial retail center. Now you can, my purpose of putting this up there, now you, at the top there on my left is the apartment complex and the parcel you can see in the triangle. As you go to the west, access to the parcel is all the way back to 148th Street. So there's a median that the county state put in from 144th to 148th Street. So to get access to this property, you have to go, as you're going to, let's say, south down 144th, you turn on Harrison Street, you go all the way to 148th Street, you make a U-turn or go through the neighborhood to get back to the parcel. So the access to the parcel is at best limited or non-existent. So from the standpoint of a real estate situation, from commercial or retail, it really has little or no value. So we went ahead, Prim met with, and myself met with the Public Works Department, County Attorney's Office about 4 or 5 months ago, looking at acquiring this property. We were informed as to the process that would happen here, so we followed the process. We also, in preparing our bid, consulted with a real estate person, an MAI, Chris Musto. He gave us about 6 comparables for multifamily properties, vacant properties that were sold recently in Sarpy County. And those averaged about $3.50 to $4 a square foot. So based upon that, we came in at $427. Now, $427 for apartment multifamily ground is right in the market. That is in the market. So what we did here, what Prim did here, was he provided a bid that gives you the market rate for this particular parcel. This parcel then, this board put the parcel out for public hearing, public bid, and that happened, and there were 7, my understanding, 7 people inquired, and it was advertised. 7 people went ahead and inquired of the property, and you had 2 bids. So this property has been subject to the market in the appropriate way. And they got the appropriate bid at $427. So what we're asking is that the county board go ahead and accept the procedure that's been followed and accept the bid at this time. I think if you're looking at $500,000 a square foot for this property, what is that? That'd be about $20-some a square foot off the top of my head, with a parcel with no access and this size of a parcel that's been out there since 2006 vacant and has gone through the process that it has now being offered for the public. It shows that there is really not a retail commercial use for this particular property. So we feel it's a multifamily type property. My client's intent would be to purchase the property and to extend, you can put about 30 units. He's had it looked at, put about 30 units. So he would combine it with his present apartment complex. So we feel our bid was fair and reasonable. We feel it reflects the market. We don't see that this is a retail commercial area. We've had an appraiser look at it, MAI. So we're asking the county to go ahead and, since we follow the procedure and it's been presented to the market, we feel our bid is reasonable and reflects the value, and we're requesting that the county board accept our bid. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
I'm looking at, I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing, I see the existing apartments to the south, and I see the parking lot, and I might need somebody from planning here, because what's the current zoning on this property?
I think it is multifamily, yes. Yeah. Nicole, I believe it is multifamily. That's my recollection, Gary.
Okay, I'm trying to understand this. Probably not. Is it 90? Or is it somewhere in the middle? And that person. Now, again, who the informal appraisal? Is it formal or formal appraisal?
The person did not provide an appraisal for us. They just provided of recent multifamily sales in Sarpy County.
Statutory process, and it's an open and public process. And so if once you get two bids or multiple bids, and if you feel that those are not any good, you're under no obligation to sell it. However, what you could do is you could reject the bids and negotiate with one of the bidders.
And did this process follow the statutory process?
It did. It did. And so the reason why the resolution was put on this way is I think there was a recommendation from admin to because of their more informal documentation related to the market value, the recommendation was to reject the bids and go get an appraisal, which I think would take more time than what may be allowed under the statute for the date of sale under this process.
And to Gary's point, this was not publicly advertised?
It was publicly
No,
advertised.
from 2006
Okay.
on until they started. That's my
Thank you,
point.
Gary.
That was my point.
Thank you,
Right.
Gary.
And we were able to confirm the zoning was the high-density residential, so multifamily.
It is, okay.
Yes.
Now, in fairness, in all that's been said and done, and we should have had an appraisal, we being Sarpy County. Okay, that didn't happen. That's not, we're not in that business. I understand that. I'm not blaming anybody.
Right.
Here's what I think is a sensible and fair resolution. We have one person that bid, which might be right around what it's actually worth, and they were 3 times higher than the low bidder. Okay? So I say I would like this to not be, we don't settle it today. We work with the highest bidder. We get a formal appraisal and we work it out. They've had an informal appraisal being comps. And it might be spot on, or it could be a little bit low, whatever. But I think if we do that and then work with them, work with the high bidder, because it also fits in with the zoning and what they have. So all of it fits in. I just think because we are the guardians of taxpayer money, and if we're $20,000 less or 30 on this, then I don't know if, I think we followed the process and everything, But I think that one last T needs to be crossed. So how can we do that?
If you wish to, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You are suggesting that we not take the current high bid, but negotiate with,
Get the appraisal.
Okay.
And if the appraisal comes in, if it comes in within a few $1,000s of that, now, obviously, we're going to have a cost to that, so that might be something to consider as well. I just want to make sure that, because not one of us on this board, we're not experts
Right.
in the real estate piece of this. So I just think if we're, I think the last T that we need to cross is make sure we have a number that fairly represents, okay? Now, that number could come in at 150. It might come in lower. I just don't know, and I think the only thing, it's just a protection that we put it out for bid, but we didn't really have anything to base it off, and now we have a high bid. Now, they did some research to come up with their bid. I understand all that. I just think, like I said, that's where I'm at.
So just, sorry, I kind of came in here a little
want me
late
to
on
sum it
this,
up?
but let me just see if I understand this correctly. The county, i.e. the board, put out a parcel of land for sale, and we requested bids in a public process.
correct,
And we got a bid. We got several bids, I'm assuming?
2 bids.
Okay, 2. So we got bids, and now we're saying, we're not happy with it. So, okay, I'm not a weatherman, but I know when it's raining, okay? And I'm not a real estate expert, but I know when a applicant follows a process that we put out, it would be unfair in my mind to go back after the fact and change the rules. So shame on us for not getting an appraisal and knowing what the actual cost of, or value of the land is. But I'm assuming anybody doing due diligence purchasing property, real property or land, has probably done that due diligence, and they have a pretty good idea of what it's worth. And if they're going to get themselves involved in a competitive bidding process, they're going to bid it at a price that's probably pretty close to fair market value. So I know I came in late, but I'm glad I got here in time to say that, because I don't understand why we're even having this discussion at this point. And no offense, you at all, Gary, or anybody else that has a different opinion, but it's almost like we're reneging on our own proposal that we put out in a fair and open process, and now saying, oh, well, we don't like it. Never mind. That's not the right thing to do. I wouldn't do that in my private business dealings, and I certainly wouldn't do it representing Sarpy County. I mean, we have to stand behind our process and honor the bids that came in and award it to the highest bidder. I think it's a pretty simple call for me.
If that's how you want, the resolution right now says to reject the bids. And so if you want to accept the bids.
Based on what? Based on what? Why are we rejecting the bid?
Well, the resolution did,
Let
but the
me be
motion.
clear. I'm not arguing what you should do. I'm telling you the facts at hand.
Right,
So what I'm trying to tell you is the history of what happened before you came.
yes.
So we got 2 bids. The resolution says to reject the bids. And so if you want to accept the high bid, you can certainly do that. Then you would make a motion to approve the resolution accepting the high bid, so long as the purchaser signs the purchase contract that we had advertised for sale
And I've
previously.
made that motion.
Yeah, we made that
And I
motion.
second it.
But just one last question, please.
Sure.
On what basis is this resolution saying we should reject the bid?
I believe that the administration, once they received the bids, then looked at the value of the land. So they did it
wow.
in a backwards process and found that there was maybe a $300,000 to a $500,000, but they didn't get a formal appraisal. And so with the idea that we purchased the land with the improvements on it, with the a convenience store on it at $700,000. I think they wanted to make sure that this was a reasonable bid. And so that's how we got to this point.
Yeah.
But you've got many options on the table here, so I'm just here to advise you, what do you guys want to do? You know, make sure it follows the process.
And my understanding is part of the problem is that we don't usually, this is unique, right? We don't
Yeah.
sell parcels of land like this on a regular basis. Is that-
Correct. This was a bit of a learning experience, I think, for everybody or all the way around. And next time I will recommend that.
And I don't know. I don't know that I would get an appraisal first every time. I mean, there's an expense. You can get comps, which, which is helpful. Are there other areas, I'm just looking at our process, are there other areas where we get bids but then have the ability to reject if we feel like there's a market that we have?
Yes, you're never under an obligation to enter into a contract if it's not beneficial to you or the county. I think there's been other times where we put contracts out for, not necessarily for sale of land, but there's professional contracts that you sometimes will reject all the bids because they're too high or too, they're not beneficial. So
I guess you just don't have the precedence of, creating a precedence that just because we had a process and we felt like at the end we didn't get the best bid that we every time would accept it. I think we should.
Precedents that we know what the land is worth, but we don't. Okay? So
Right.
obviously we have some process issues to clean up, but I think if we look at the macro picture, what's in the greater good of the citizens of Sarpy County? We have an outlot that hasn't had any development on it in a long time. We have prospective bidders that want to come in and purchase that. I would assume to develop it, which will generate tax dollars and bring back revenue into the county in a positive way. I don't know. To me, so we have no idea what this land's worth. Best I can tell, right? No idea. We have a hunch. We got an idea, but we don't know for sure, right?
there's been no appraisal on the property, correct?
Right.
And I'm only answering questions that were asked of me. I'm
No, I
fully
know.
aware of this board has multiple choices in front of it, so I have no.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask you, we don't have a statutory responsibility to open up negotiations with the bidders.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, that's what I wanted to know. So, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Warren, so will you restate that you're going to amend Resolution 2022-46 to include the following language, and that's approve bids presented and accept the high bid?
Right. And
Okay.
you mentioned then to have a
Yes, I have
purchase
the,
contract signed or?
right, on the condition that the purchaser
Right.
signs the contract that was advertised.
Right.
Which I believe all bidders received a copy of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. My last comment will be, and Commissioner Kelly made this comment, we don't know what the land is worth. So my opinion is that we have options to continue to work with the high bidder, even if we don't accept that high bid today. And I understand the process. There is a process in place, but that process in place, there's always, we never have to accept what comes before us. Now, if you want to accept this here, and he had comps, and if you're very confident in those comps, they should prove out. And if they prove out, they're going to prove out in in that appraisal, and then there we have it.
My only issue is another for an appraisal. I'm guessing closer to track it out of time. Is it 20,000 square foot, which is a half an acre?
Right.
That will allow setback for someone else to come in and put in multi-family. And it's somebody else, they're either going to have to process close at what kind of rezoning would be in there. Simply because it's on a corner.
And how much do you think the appraisal is going to be?
I would guess probably 5 to 10, probably around 5.
Would it be helpful to look at the comps?
We can look at comps. I have a quick, we did work with a real estate agent who gave us a quick comp of price per square foot, and I can look back at those and see that's where we got the values of 300 to 500,000. But they varied depending on whether the real estate agent was telling us the price or the appraiser was telling us the price. So the real estate agent was 500,000, the appraiser was closer to 300,000.
But that would have had to have been commercial comps.
So I'm guessing, yeah, highest and best use.
Yeah. Well, highest and best use for multifamily parcel is multifamily.
Right.
It's not commercial, so.
We definitely need to look at it closer. They weren't, that was a really high level evaluation for them.
The struggle I have is Commissioner Mixon, I think, raises some good points, and I'm hesitant to spend 10 grand to figure out that we should accept the highest bidder. I also, give some deference to the fact that they followed a process, but I don't want to short the taxpayer either. I think what I'd rather see happen is some communication about the comps before we spend any money on an appraisal, and some negotiation to see if they're where, something that's at least reasonably fair to the taxpayer. I feel like we're missing a little bit of information for me personally to go forward on that basis today. But that's just me. Any further comments, questions?
And my last comment on all of this, and I'm not Mr. Lang and the people involved in this, my duty is to the taxpayers, and I understand, and I think obviously that's probably the best use is for your group to be the buyer and add on, but I just want to make sure we're at that right number, so.
It was moved by Commissioner Warren to amend the resolution to accept the bids and to enter into an agreement on the high bid.
Yep, that's what I got.
It was seconded by Commissioner Kelly. Please vote.
So can you just, we're voting on accepting the highest.
You're voting
bid?
on accepting the bids that were presented and then to accept the high bid out of those bids.
Okay.
I don't see a box on mine.
You don't,
Yeah, I'm voting.
I'm voting yes.
I'm voting yes.
you don't have a box, the rest of them do. All right, Don, are you A or nay?
I'm an aye.
Okay, Commissioner Klug has voted, Burmeister has voted, Mixon, Warren.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so it's A's, Kelly, Klug, and Warren, and nays, Burmeister and Mixon. So motion carries.
Resolution number 5.1. Resolution 2022-078, right-of-way easements with Omaha Public Power District for county property along the outside perimeter of the Fairview Road landfill for purposes of electric transmission and/or distribution lines. Beth Garber, purchasing agent.
Thanks. I just request that we table this a week. We received some comments back yesterday from NDE about the stuff, to include some safety language in the right-of-way. Just want to make that a little stronger.
Table it for 1 week.
1 week, sir.
Motion to be tabled for 1 week.
Second.
All right, I'm going to have to do this because I don't have a box, so it's Kelly and, or Warren and Klug.
Yep.
Is it A's 5?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Yep.
I'm not having good luck down here today, I'm sorry.
5.2 is Resolution 2022-082, issuance, sale, and delivery of limited tax highway allocation fund pledge bonds, Series 2022, in the principal amount of not to exceed $60 million for the purpose of paying the costs of constructing certain road improvements, including road surfaces, subgrades, and bridges. Bill Conley, CFO.
Good afternoon. About 11 months ago, this board approved the largest ever bond issue for the county, a little over $52 million for road projects, and today I'm asking you to exceed that and to authorize and approve what will now be the largest bond issue in the county's history of a little over $60 million probably by the time we get done. And so I want to walk through, I know you have some background information on it. I've presented, the slides are in front of you as handouts. Want to just kind of discuss some of the basics of what you're being asked today and to open it up for any questions. So what we're talking about is a $60 million highway allocation pledge bond. These would be like previous highway allocation pledge bonds. They are secured by the state highway allocation fund that we get. That is from a variety of sources, most notably is the gasoline tax, and that goes to the state and then to the counties. This, I want to set at the outset, this board has set aside that the restriction that we can only have debt service on bonds under the highway allocation pledge area of half of what we get each year. So that's a very conservative limit. And this, even with this $60 million bond issue, we will be within that criteria. So the bond team that we have for this is the A team. PFM is our municipal advisor. Susan Gerlach and her team have already demonstrated tremendous value to this county. Our bond counsel is Mike Rogers with Gilmore Bell, absolutely the best in the business. The team from Sarpy County, and then our bond trustee, UBT. And I'll mention a little bit later, they'll be having a slightly different role for this bond issue than in the past. So here's the nuts and bolts. The 2022 bond issue that we're asking you to approve today, the approximate amount is $60 million. We will do it as we have done in the bonds in the last year and a half, last year. It'll be a competitive sale, meaning we're going to go to the market, not dissimilar to what you just talked about. We're going to go to the market and say, we want to sell $60 million of bonds. Bidders can come to us and say, we will take that and we will price it at a certain interest rate. And so that's what we've done on the last two bond issues that were in about a 1.7% total interest cost range. We won't be in that range for this bond issue. I can promise you that. So the timing is that we are, this Thursday, we're having our call with the Moody's rating agency. That's an important call to discuss with them this bond issue, the status of the county. They are the ones that give us a rating, a debt rating for the county. As you know, as everybody knows, we like to highlight that this county is AAA rated. Our intent is to try to maintain that with that discussion and the analysis with the rating agencies. Bids, I don't know the exact dates, but we are looking to probably go to the market in the third week of April and to close. And when I say close, that means we get the funds around the 5th of May, plus or minus a few days or a week. We're looking at a 20-year amortization, so a 20-year bond. Interest rate, that's really the wild card. Never in my career have I issued bonds, and I think I've done $500 million of bonds in my career. I've never issued any during a war, and so this is really a unique time with a lot of things facing the market. Over the noon hour at lunch, I was listening to CNBC, which that's what nerds, financial nerds like me do, but they were talking about as many as 8 or 9 interest rate hikes by the Fed, perhaps in the next 12 months, 8 or 9. And so, when's the right time? Well, I think the earlier the better is the right time. And so, and we have a really good use for the funds. I'll talk a little bit about that. I wish Scott was here, but I know you know the reasons. Annual debt service payments on this $60 million are probably going to be in around the $4 million range. We've been running models at about a 3% pricing, and that's what that generates. And then one difference with this bond that we've never done before is we are going to take the proceeds internally, and we're going to pay the bills internally. And it'll save one step with, where in the past we used to get you to approve a resolution. We would send all the invoices down to our partners in Lincoln at UBT, and then they would pay the bills. We are going to do that internally. You'll still be approving the invoices like you do with all claims. UBT will still serve in the very important role of paying all the bondholders and making sure that we comply with all the restrictions with the bondholders and the relationship there. So that's a little bit different, but I think we're set up to do that. Again, I mentioned earlier the security and the source of payment is the state of Nebraska Highway Allocation Fund revenues, and I'll show you on the next slide, or a couple slides later, we have a lot of numbers, but the bottom line is we will stay within the 50% limit on debt service to Highway Allocation Fund. If you're wondering where our debt is at, this slide just shows you the total debt for the county, and includes the $60 million on there. So with the new debt, with this new bond, we will be at about $179 million in debt. Much of that has come in the last year. Two of those bonds are highway allocation bonds that we did in the last year, 110 million of them, exactly, to be precise. $40 million building bond that we did for the construction of the correctional center. And, you know, we had planned when we built the correctional center that bond would need to be $65 million. So we have internally saved some funds, utilized other funds to reduce that bond. So that's kind of the total bond picture. The interesting thing I was looking at it today, this morning, was our weighted average cost of capital, or our weighted average cost of debt, is 1.9%, which I think this board, this county should feel very proud of. It's going to go up a little bit because of this next bond issue, as I mentioned. So a lot of numbers here. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but I'll just, I guess, highlight a couple things on this slide, and that is that we do a pro forma of all the public works funds. There's 3 funds today, and we have a 10-year pro forma where we take all of their operations, all the road construction, anticipate revenues, and we do the debt service over that time period to make sure that we're going to be in compliance, and so that we have enough cash in the funds. And so that's really all this is trying to tell you, is that we do schedules to evaluate what that looks like down the road. And at the bottom there, you can see what our projected debt service as a percent of highway allocation fund is, and that we will be up at the 50%, right at the 50% for a couple of years, and then we will trend back down. The 2017 bond, which was back on this slide, we will pay off this December. That's about $1.5 million remaining. And so, you know, we just continue to pay them down, and so our ratio will get a little bit better. The point on this slide I just want to make is on these pro formas that we do, we have a variety of sources of funding for road projects. We internally within our general ledger system in the public works funds, we allocate some funds. In the past, we had our construction funds, and we issued a bond held by UBT. So the 2021 bond, UBT is holding all those funds. And so we still have some left. We anticipate at the end of the fiscal year, we'll have about $9 million left. It could be high or low by, $5 million, depending on invoices coming in. But those carry over. And then this 2022 bond, which will be internal. So really the bottom line on this slide is that over the next 1 and 6 road projects that we anticipate we'll have about $128 million to do road projects during that time, unless we do any more bond issues. And it's possible we could do one more small one in a couple of years, like in the $15 to $20 million range, but it would have to be pretty small. So those are my slides. I would be happy to entertain any questions you have.
So by keeping it internal, I assume we save money by doing that?
I think we save a little bit of money. It's really more about a process improvement, and we'll be able to pay our vendors quicker. It was, part of the reason was the turnaround to get a contractor paid was an additional week or two.
Like, kind of like warrants. It's got to go that one additional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're comfortable, Bill, the 50% debt service, you're comfortable that that's a conservative position and the county's protected at that percentage?
I am, yeah. I think that's, we may have a day where we'll want to discuss whether that should be higher, but I think this board did a nice job of establishing that conservative benchmark for the county. And again, I wish Scott was here to talk about what this money means to the county in terms of building roads, because there's never been a more accurate statement of build it and they will come, and you put in the roads and the developments come. And I think the growth, the valuation growth that we'll see in this county and continue to see will be somewhat attributed to the fact that we, as a county, this board is setting the table for the growth in the county through roads and infrastructure.
Well, I think the other key pieces that you're talking about, and which Scott would be talking about, is in the past it seems like we've been trailing the development. So then for us to come in later to put the roads in, it became more expensive. So we're trying to be ahead of that and control the development, put the roads in, let the development come to the roads, come to the infrastructure instead of the other way around, because we save money putting the roads in first and getting everything lined up. So I think there's a lot of positives and a lot of advantages also to do all of this. And obviously the growth is there, it's explosive, and we just need to get the infrastructure in place and get out of the way.
Bill, just want to thank you and your team for staying ahead of this as much as possible with the interest rates moving in the wrong direction. So appreciate the due diligence and the expedient nature which you're addressing this issue.
Thanks.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Warren and seconded by Commissioner Klug to approve. Any further comments or questions?
Yeah, Bill, I have a couple questions, if you don't mind. So we're gonna amortize this bond over 20 years, right?
Yes.
And so is it tied to a treasury interest rate, or, I mean, how do you finance something over 20 years? Is it based on a 20-year bond rate that the federal government provides, or?
Well, we're doing a competitive sale.
Right.
So we're going to go to the market and we're going to ask various institutions if they want to bid on this bond.
Okay.
And so we've indicated a rough, an approximate structure that we want to have. So the bonds will, have different maturity lengths.
Right.
So the final bond will be 20 years, but there will be bondholders that'll have bonds that'll be due in 19, 18, and 17 years and so on. So the principal will mature each year.
Okay.
During the time, and it'll be based on what that institution thinks they can sell to their constituents.
So the bond we did last year was like 1 point some percent, right?
About 1.7%.
And you're expecting this one to be?
Close to 3%.
Really? Because I think it's going to be higher. If the CNBC forecast is accurate, I mean, if I was going to bid on a bond and I knew that the Fed was getting ready to, do incremental raises up to 7, but probably no less than 3, we could probably go to the bank on, right, at 50 basis points per raise. That's 1.5%. So if I was going to come into a competitive bid like this, if I was doing my due diligence, wouldn't I factor those programmed or anticipated interest rates into account, which would push the actual rate that we end up going on market for a little higher than?
Could be higher. I mean, it could be higher. It's moving 5 to 10 basis points a week
Right.
in many cases, and so.
So do we have the ability, as this shakes out at some point and after the bids come in? I know it seemed like we just had this discussion.
I was going that route, but
But I mean, do we have an escape clause? If
We
it
do,
doesn't
yeah.
make-
We have an escape clause at any time. If the markets get unreasonable even before we go to the market, we won't even put this out for bid.
And this is a technical question you may not know the answer to, but I'm only asking because if you do, I've read some stuff and seen some stuff that said there's an inversion going on between the 2-year interest rate and the 10-year interest rate. How does that impact the bonding process, or does it at all? Do you know, or?
That specific,
Yeah, I mean, is there a
Situation.
significance to that? Because it sure sounds like all the talking heads think it's a big deal. And I don't know if it has a recessionary implication or it's going to impact the long-term rate. I mean, I don't really understand it that good, so.
yeah, I'm not an economist.
Okay.
I just understand that short-term rates are going up faster than long-term rates, and
Yeah.
I don't know all of what that means, other than I think that, the Fed has indicated that they will raise rates if the market, the stock market doesn't react and if the market doesn't
Okay, and
correct things on its own, I guess is what I'm saying. So,
yeah, one last question. Commissioner Warren and I were with the county engineer yesterday, and I made a comment, how much county funds do we have, to do road projects? Is it like 10 million a year? He said, well, it's 20 million and it's increasing every year. But when I looked at this chart, and maybe I'm just interpreting this wrong, but it says in 25, 26, 27, we only have 9 million. Is that?
yeah.
And I guess I don't understand that. Why would we only have 9? Because of the amount we are bonding and the obligation we have, we can't have more than that?
Yeah, well, really, once we go through this, this time period where we have a large amount of road construction, we will be down to a kind of a baseline of 9 or 10 million
Oh, wow.
for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Well, I'll just, I'll echo Commissioner Klug's comments. Appreciate you getting out in front of this as fast as you can, because it'll be obviously advantageous to us if we can get this to market quick.
And
Thank you.
I just want to add on a couple of things that you said, and I'm not the economist either, but I do know there's just so much cash sitting on the sidelines and there's nowhere to put it. And if you don't want to take the stock market, you take bonds. And interest rates, there's no doubt they're going up. Everything's cyclical. We see this all the time. But I would, again, we're doing the right thing because the interest rates are going to continue up, and they're going to stay until they can get inflation under control. And so they got to kind of slow things down a little bit, and that's the way to do it. So it's going to be, you're going to have several years before it maybe even shifts back. So if we don't do it now, we're delaying, and we're going to be, some of us be out of this, probably these positions at that point. But I just, the money's there, and the 3%, we might get it, but if we don't get to the market now, we're going to lose that opportunity.
Commissioner Mixon, that's a really good point. I wish I had made it. And that being that, with the stock market, there is a lot of cash in the markets. The stock market is very volatile, and that what tempers the increase in interest rates is the fact that an investment in a bond for Sarpy County, we are AAA rated, and it's very solid.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Perfect. It's been moved and seconded to approve. Please vote.
I'm an aye.
All right, hold on, let me put you in. Okay, ayes 5, nays none, motion carried.
All agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Commissioners is adjourned.